What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to share with you my top 3 tips on how to be more creative. If you don't know me, my name's Alana, and I happen to own my own handmade paper flower business. And one of the things I get asked all the time is, how can I become more creative? And so I thought it would be fun to share with you my top 3 tips, although they may not be what you'd expect. Now, before you leave, if you're thinking, well, I don't care about being creative, I am not an artist, I don't see why I'd benefit from being more creative, I'm not crafty, let me stop you right there and give you 2 examples of why everyone can benefit from being a little bit more creative and developing this skill. Example number 1 comes from an experience that I had a couple weeks ago when I was asked to make a birthday cake. Now, when I was asked to make this cake, everything that could possibly go wrong did, and let's just give you a few examples. So, first off, when I was trying to level the cake, I made a huge mistake on one of the layers and ended up losing an entire layer of cake. One of my piping tips kept getting clogged with cookie crumbs because I did not crush them small enough. And then when I went to put my decorations on the cake and was placing the last one on, I realized, oh my gosh, I forgot to put the chocolate ganache on before putting the direct decorations. Yeah, don't do that. And then once the cake was complete and it looked beautiful and I thought nobody will know, I realized that it was too tall to fit inside of the cake box that I had. Long story short, because I've practiced and developed this habit of creative thinking, I was able to get the cake to fit in the box, and it turned out to be a hit. Everyone loved the cake, and nobody would have known that I had had these oops mishaps along the way. So, example number 2 comes from running my own paper flower business. So, I started this business about 3 years ago, and one of the first things that I realized would be a challenge was to be found on Google or Etsy or through the internet, because paper flowers is a pretty saturated market. Lots of people sell them, lots of people make them. None that were exactly like mine, but even if mine were unique, they still needed to be found in some kind of search ranking. And so what I decided to do was implement some of these creative thinking skills that I'm going to tell you about. And I took paper flowers and didn't change the design or anything, but I marketed them as place card holders. And this little tweak of calling a paper flower a place card holder suddenly got my ranking and in search results to the top. And now my business grew way faster than I had expected, and everyone was able to find them really quickly. So, as you can see from those 2 examples, creativity isn't just about creating art. I looked up the definition of creativity. Webster said that creativity is the ability to create or the quality of being creative. And I know that gives us like nothing to work with. So I digged a little further and I found this great quote by the cartoon artist Scott Adams that I really liked. He said, "Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep." If I were to define creativity, I would say that creativity is the ability to solve problems through resourcefulness. So here are my 3 tips. Number 1, put restrictions on yourself. Now, this may sound like it's really weird because who wouldn't you want more resources to be more creative? But stick with me. So, when I first started decorating cakes for fun, I lived in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, we didn't have big art stores or baking goods stores. We didn't have a Joann's, we didn't have a Michael's. We had whatever we could find at like Walmart or our local grocery stores. And I really wanted to make cool looking cakes, and I had to stretch myself and figure out how could I do some of these cool things that I would see on TV or YouTube without the necessary resources. And now this, mind you, was before Amazon Prime, so I couldn't just get it shipped at reasonable prices that I felt were worth it for just doing it as a hobby. But what was really neat is I developed these cool skills that I would never have developed had the resources been so easily available to me. And now when I decorate cakes here in Washington, I realize, oh, that's how fondant is supposed to set. Oh, that's how royal icing is supposed to set. Because we also had a lot of humidity in Hawaii. And again, those restrictions caused me to be able to develop these new skills and stretch my creative muscles. So, number 2 is stay with a problem longer. Now, here's a quote from Einstein. He said, "It is not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer." And I'm a firm believer that the longer we sit with a problem, the more we allow our subconscious mind to kind of work and pull out all the information and details that we know so that we can come up with a solution. And it ties in perfectly with tip number 3. I'd like to take a moment to interrupt this message to point out that I'm by no means an expert. I'm just a girl sharing some tips that I thought could be beneficial to each and every one of you. And now back to tip 3, which is learn and study as much as you possibly can about the subject. Now, this is one of those things that I feel is underestimated. When you're given a problem, you can only solve it to the extent of what you know. And the more we invest in our learning and studying of the subject, the more opportunities we have to develop and come up with a solution. So you probably noticed that I tie creativity and problem solving together very tightly, which is why I feel like it is such a beneficial skill to have for anyone, no matter what you're involved in. So when it comes to learning and studying as much as you possibly can about the subject, I like to think of it in terms of cooking and a cabinet. And every single piece of knowledge or information that you're able to glean is like adding another spice, herb, or ingredient to your cabinet and your kitchen arsenal. And there are many solutions that the only way that you would be able to come up with them is if you had all the necessary ingredients. So as Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So go out and learn as much as you can about the subject. Study like crazy. I will study for hours and hours at a time to figure out a solution. So as a quick recap, my 3 tips were: 1, put restrictions on yourself; 2, stay with the problem longer; and 3, learn and study as much as you possibly can about the subject. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope these tips were helpful for you. If you actually have other ideas of ways to exercise that creative muscle, I'd love to know in the comments below. Peace out.